Thank you. And I will shift gears a little bit towards asking how we used to measure and quantify fertility over the age. And it's, let me start by saying that 3 years ago, I, together with Jesus Adrian Alvarez, I suggested a new way of thinking about fertility, and we called it the born once, die once approach. And we call it born once, die once because it takes the perspective that to the individual, birth is a single event that happens for sure, and it happens only once. And it was motivated because we were mortality researchers, and mortality is certain and happens only once. So there's a bridge between mortality and fertility thinking. Now, I will not go into what is the born once, die once in detail, but I tell you what you can do with it. And what you can do is, it gives you tools that normally mortality researchers use to describe the age pattern of fertility. And you can describe it by the density function, which is the typical maternity function, just normalized. Or you can also have survival functions of fertility, which is some sort of cumulative thinking of the numbers of to-be-born babies. And then you have also the hazard of fertility. And of course, you know the hazard of fertility for transition to first birth, transition to last birth. But here we can take all the data together independent of parity. We don't have to use special methods, and we can use just macro level information and don't need any additional information to do this. And this is an example for Swedish data since 1880 by decades. Now, the open questions that we then came into was, well, this is kind of a weird perspective on fertility, putting yourself on the head, seeing everything from the child's perspective and not the mother's. How does it relate to traditional ways of quantifying fertility? And could we maybe translate between these two perspectives? And also, could we bring the advantage that we have in the born once, die once framework into the normal fertility thinking? And this is what I'm going to show here briefly. And this is 34 equations. I have no time for this, so I just show the key how to translate. And the key how to translate is that the born once, die once works with birth counts and calculates everything just based on birth counts, while in the traditional fertility world, we are used to use fertility rates. And we know from more than 100 years ago, from Lotka, the population renewal equations, that in order to get from the birth counts to mothers at age A, we need to have the maternal cohort size, so daughters born of age 0, and then they need to survive, and the information of survival we get from the maternal life table. So the maternal birth size times the survival is the exposures, times the age-specific fertility rate is occurrence divided by exposures, and that gives you the exposures. But so this is the, how did I go back? We cannot just translate between these birth counts and the fertility rates. We can also then, using this relationship, to converge the frameworks. So when is the born once, die once equal to the traditional? And that is observing that in order to be born, my mother has to be alive. So my birth is conditional on my mother's survival, while for my mother, she can just give birth. She is already there. So we can simply say, let's assume maternal survival is certain, which is a classic thing to be doing to calculate TFR, for example. Then we can equate the born once, die once perspective to the more traditional calculations. And when we do this, then we can take our example of the Swedish data where we have density, survival, and hazard functions for births in the born once, die once perspective. We can translate that into the traditional work using age-specific fertility rates and the normal measures, and we get a density, survival, and hazard function for fertility in the classic thinking. And when we compare these two perspectives, here we divide the top line by the middle line, we get the bottom line, and when you see here, the difference between these two frameworks in the ratios is just 10% for the oldest cohorts, but goes down to 5% as we come to younger cohorts, and the most recent cohorts is just maybe 2% difference. So we conclude, oh yeah, I wanted to tell you there are also equations behind it. It's net reproductive rate, gross reproductive rate, age-specific fertility rate, survival. If you're interested, you can look into the paper. But to summarize, what we suggest, this integrated approach of these two theoretical frameworks offers first that you can use the advantage of the born once, die once now in your traditional work for low mortality countries, because there is no much difference between the approaches. We can transfer the advantage, and it also, I haven't shown you, offers new summary measures of the tempo and quantum of fertility. And for my personal joy, and also for other people who use this approach, it now opens also a period perspective in the born once, die once, because when I originally published it, it would only work for cohorts. But now we have removed the confounding effects there. So with that, thank you for your attention, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Annette.